From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Our top story today, coronavirus. Chinese authorities say that just under 6,000 confirmed cases of pneumonia caused by the novel coronavirus have been reported as of Wednesday, with the death toll rising to 132. 65 cases of the coronavirus have also been confirmed outside of the Asian nation. The streets of major cities across China have become virtually deserted as prevention measures remain in full effect. 30 cities and provinces have launched a level 1 emergency response, while Hong Kong declared its highest emergency response.
Coronavirus prevention is definitely our top priority. The economy is a small matter for a country as big as ours. Everyone has contributed to prevention costs. Many enterprises and successful people are donating money to the infected areas. The money is not a big deal for our country.
Meanwhile, the 2 new emergency hospitals being built in the city of Wuhan are soon to be finished. Both hospitals will be fully dedicated to the treatment of patients infected with the coronavirus. Doctors in Wuhan, the city of 11 million people where the virus was first detected, had described overcrowded facilities and a shortage of test kits, protective gear and other medical equipment. In response, authorities announced the construction of the first building on January 24th, and it is expected to be fully operational by February 3rd.
At this point, I'm basically working from 7 a.m. in the morning until midnight, with a 1 or 2 hour break in between, and on a 24-hour standby.
On Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced the details of his so-called Middle East peace plan. The proposal was unveiled by Trump at a news conference alongside embattled Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The deal recognizes illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, and in a move seen as an attempt to fend off opposition, Trump proposed the creation of an independent Palestinian state with its capital in East Jerusalem. Many Palestinian organizations have vowed to reject any plan that does not include their right to self-determination and the right of all refugees to return to the lands they were driven out of by Israeli settlers.
Today's agreement is a historic opportunity for the Palestinians to finally achieve an independent state of their very own. After 70 years of little progress, this could be the last opportunity they will ever have, and last for a lot of reasons. We'll never have a team like we have right now.
And soon after the announcement, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas denounced Trump's plan. Speaking after a meeting of Palestinian resistance movements, Abbas said that no amount of financial incentives will make the people of Palestine abandon their struggle, adding that they will not accept any deal without the return of occupied territories.
I would like to say to the duo, Trump and Netanyahu, that Jerusalem is not for sale, and all our rights are not for sale and not for bargaining. Your conspiracy deal won't pass. If Jerusalem will go, would we accept a state without Jerusalem? It is impossible for any Palestinian child, or Arab, or Christian to accept this. This is why we told them from the beginning, no.
Residents in the Gaza Strip have also spoken out against the U.S. and Israeli plan.
We call on the Palestinian factions to unite to face this alleged deal of the century. We as Palestinians absolutely reject it, in all its details, decisions and plans.
We do not recognize the deal of the century, as well as we do not recognize the U.S. nor Israel. Every person decides his fate, and we, as Palestinians, are a united people. The U.S. cannot discuss this deal of shame. We are against this deal.
And protests against Trump's announcement have been ongoing across the occupied territories. On Wednesday, demonstrators gathered in Al-Keba, north of the Jordan Valley, to express their anger at the United States and Israel for their continued attempts at removing them from their lands. Demonstrations are expected to continue throughout the week. In Jordan, a crowd of protesters gathered near the U.S. Embassy in Amman to protest Trump's plan. Speaking to protesters, the Jordanian Minister of Parliament rejected any potential deal by the Trump administration. In other news, a magnitude 7.7 earthquake struck the Caribbean Sea between Jamaica and Cuba late on Tuesday, but did not trigger a tsunami. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued a report stating that a tsunami alert issued for Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and Cuba has largely passed based on all available data. However, the agency recommends that national authorities determine the level of alert for each country. Social media was flooded with reports of tremors being felt in Kingston, St. Andrew, St. Anne, and Manchester. No deaths or injuries have been reported. Thousands of people rallied outside the El Alto airport in Bolivia on Tuesday to greet presidential candidate Luis Arce on his arrival from Argentina. Social movements gathered since early in the day to welcome the candidate for the Movement Towards Socialism Party and his running mate David Choquehuanca. This is Arce's first time back in Bolivia since he was officially nominated to represent the MAS in the upcoming general elections. But shortly after his arrival, the de facto government served Arce with a legal notice in relation to an investigation into the alleged breach of his duties. According to the notice, Arce is expected in court on Wednesday to be questioned by prosecutors. This investigation was announced 1 day after his nomination as candidate by the MAS party and comes as part of the ongoing persecution of party members and supporters. Telesur's cameras caught up with Luis Arce soon after his return to Bolivia.
This subpoena is proof of the de facto government's doublespeak. First of all, the Interior Minister said recently that I can move freely in Bolivia, but then, as I left the plane, and even before I went through immigration, a police officer was waiting for me with a subpoena. But we can't do anything at this time but accept that the de facto authorities are trying to silence us via political persecution. It's clear that they are coming for the MAS party and for everyone who represents the revolutionary process. There is also a risk I may be detained if the prosecutors act outside the law. I will go to the court on Wednesday to answer their questions because I have nothing to hide. We have the truth on our side, and I will try to clear up any of their doubts.
Meanwhile, the coordinator of social movements in the city of Cochabamba said that Arce's arrival was a sign of hope.
Luis Arce, candidate of the MAS, arrived to the city of El Alto and was received by David Choquehuanca, candidate for vice president, representing social movements in Bolivia. In the midst of a coup and uncertainty over the political situation, they represent unity and hope to overcome the coup. We are sure that through a democratic path and a popular vote, we will be able to reverse the coup, which was carried out primarily against social movements and the poorest in Bolivia.
Coming up, Peru's Keiko Fujimori will be once again behind bars. We'll tell you why when we come back.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomum. Monday, only on Telesur.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Brazilians living in areas affected by heavy floods are trying to rebuild their homes after over 25,000 were displaced. At least 50 people have been reported dead due to heavy storms that tore through the state of Minas Gerais. Rescue efforts are ongoing as some remain missing and several thousand are in urgent need of food and temporary shelter.
My son took me out of our house on his back, so I wouldn't put my feet in the water. When he came back to get my mother, there was no street. The water was already waist high.
We have many houses that are on the riverbank, that are still filled with clay, which has to be removed. People have to give that support. I know you need food, I know you need clothes, but working is more important here today.
A state of emergency has been declared in Chile's northern Atacama region after floods and mudslides left at least one person dead. Heavy rains have affected several municipalities including Copiapó, Tierra Amarilla, Diego de Almagro, Chañaral and Alto del Carmen. Authorities have deployed emergency teams to aid with rescue efforts as at least 2 people are missing. Also in Chile, a delegation of the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights is investigating the violations that have taken place during anti-government protests. The commission will be in the country until Friday. The specialists are holding various meetings with state officials and social movements in order to issue a report. It is expected that the delegation will draft a report on the various human rights violations at the hands of the state against protesters and the excessive use of force by police. Peruvian political leader Keiko Fujimori has been detained once again. On Tuesday, a judge sentenced Fujimori to a new 15-month jail term as prosecutors continue their investigation into her alleged money laundering. This new sentence comes on top of the 13 months she has already served in jail before her release last November. Fujimori, the daughter of disgraced former President Alberto Fujimori, is accused of taking money from Brazilian construction firm Odebrecht to finance her presidential campaign. The first international mission of solidarity with Venezuela of La Via Campesina concluded on Tuesday. The 9-day mission was made up of activists of rural movements from Chile, Nicaragua, Mozambique, Uruguay, the United States, and Spain. The goal of the mission was to look into the struggle by the Venezuelan people against the U.S. blockade. The international guests visited the Paulo Freire Institute of Latin American Agroecology in Barinas and saw El Maizal commune in Lara State. They got to know the Picachos Communal Council in Apure for lessons on the transition from conventional agriculture to agroecology.
They're very organized here. I mean, hundreds of families, thousands of people in a given comuna who grow all different kinds of crops, who raise cattle and hogs and chickens, and that produce contributes to the livelihood of the families who are there, who are part of the comuna, and also then is extended to local communities as well. So there's, in some cases, places where shops have been set up where people can, from the larger community, can come and have various food products available to them as well. We're here finding out that we have a responsibility of bringing a contrasting message back to the United States and to other countries that what the corporate media is telling us is in fact overall inaccurate. La Via Campesina, we as a delegation will be preparing a report and then other ways to disseminate what our observations have been while we're here in Venezuela.
And the solidarity did not end in the fields. The group took part in Venezuelan culture and music and attended a local political rally. La Via Campesina is an international movement made up of 164 organizations in 73 countries, representing some 200 million peasants, small and medium farmers, landless, rural, youth, and women, also indigenous people and migrants. Venezuela's National Assembly has approved the establishment of a commission to investigate the use of aid funds given to the opposition, of which lawmakers say there's no trace. The commission will investigate opposition members for corruption, including the self-proclaimed President Juan Guaidó. They will look into the millions of dollars given to Guaidó after the so-called Venezuela Aid Live concert held in Colombia last year, which never reached the people of Venezuela. A lawmaker from the opposition, José Brito, said they will also investigate the money given to these groups by U.S. organizations, including U.S. aid.
We will begin working and will request the help of the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives to look into the money that was sent, which the USAID said was more than $400 million. We want to tell the Department of State that those who received the money and promised to implement social programs took at least 30% of that money for themselves.
Meanwhile, Guaidó is seeking to secure international support, including that of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We spoke to Louis Lang from Alba Movements in Canada. He said international solidarity was important in protecting the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people.
Well, yes, I think that it's very important that CARICOM took that position because what the U.S. is trying to do is they're trying to divide the countries in order to be able to push for their own policies. So the actual offensive against the Latin American countries, like for instance, this is what they did in the OAS as well when they could not win a resolution against Venezuela in the OAS. The U.S. got Canada to form the Lima Group, and they're trying to do the same thing in CARICOM, where they don't. CARICOM has so far stood against the actions of the U.S., and they've stood in solidarity with Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua. And this is one of the reasons why Pompeo went to Latin America in order to try to divide these countries and try to impose, give the impression that he has support. And of course, it's not true. He doesn't have the majority of support. And as you point out, only a small number of leaders of the CARICOM countries actually went to meet him. So this is, I think, CARICOM is playing a very positive role. And we hope that they continue to stand up for, take a principled position. Canada is also under the control of the U.S. in terms of trade policy. So now Canada has to ratify the new NAFTA agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. So there's a great deal of pressure that is put on Canada to be to subordinate itself to the interests of the U.S. And so Mr. Trudeau, instead of speaking on behalf of the Canadian people, is simply enunciating what the foreign policy of the U.S. is, and he's also saying that it's almost it's necessary for Canada to be in this subordinate position with the U.S. in order for it to survive economically. So all kinds of pressure is put on Canada, and this government has doesn't seem to have any interest in following its own independent policy and trying to eliminate some of the bad effects that this policy is having on our economy and our own foreign policies and our own positions that we take internationally.
After this break, fighting continues in Libya with 3 more children dead in Tripoli. Stay with us.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dot in the eye. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursday, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us again. 3 children have been killed and 2 others were injured in the Libyan capital Tripoli following clashes between forces loyal to the Government of National Accord and General Khalifa Haftar's so-called Libyan National Army. The GNA accused Haftar's forces of triggering the clashes by shelling locations controlled by them. The incident comes 2 weeks after the 2 sides signed a short-lived truce to end the months of fighting for the control of Tripoli. Mali's former coup leader Amadou Sanogo has been freed from detention after being in prison for 6 years on charges of killing 21 soldiers. Sanogo and several others staged a military coup in 2012 after rebels took control of the country's north. The junta soon stepped aside due to international pressure, but during their reign, Sanogo and 16 others allegedly abducted and killed 21 soldiers who opposed the coup.
Perhaps there's a law in the making that will ask for an amnesty for all the events from 2012 to now. I do not know if I will benefit from it, but in any case, 7 years of detention, the chamber comes to uphold the law, that is to say, the right to liberty. Therefore, we cannot talk about grace or amnesty at the moment.
A judge in South Africa has rejected an application by the city of Cape Town to evict a group of refugees who are squatting at a church in the city's central business district. Judge Daniel Tulare said he cannot order the eviction of the refugees until the applicants provide alternative emergency accommodation for them. He argued that sending people into the cold will not make him any different from the apartheid-era judges who approved the forced removals of black people from urban areas. Hundreds of workers at electronic and appliance manufacturer Hisense's plant in South Africa are on strike, demanding a 15% pay rise. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa is leading the strike action. A NUMSA representative said the workers at the company have not received any wage increase since 2017. Still in South Africa, the government has come to the rescue of troubled national airline South African Airways. The state-owned Development Bank of Southern Africa announced on Tuesday that it will provide $240 million to enable the airline to continue its operations. Last week, the cash-strapped airline suspended dozens of flights after it failed to meet the deadline to raise funds to pay its creditors. The UN Security Council has met to discuss the crisis in Yemen, as attacks have surged over the last few weeks after months of relative calm. The Council highlighted the importance of stopping the military escalation and called for the parties to re-engage in a political process. The renewed violence between a Saudi and a UAE-led military coalition and Houthi rebels has already caused hundreds of casualties since it restarted almost 2 weeks ago. And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.